You know that some of the traumatic experiences that happened in your childhood could be why your relationships are not working, why your health is deteriorating, why you're finding it difficult relating with people. Welcome to today's episode of Wellbeing with NECA, where we talk about your mental health and well-being. On today's episode, we'll be talking about what is called advanced childhood experiences and how they affect you and what to do if you are being adversely affected even in adulthood. Adverse childhood experiences is a psychological term used to describe traumatic experiences that people have before they turn 18. These things are organized or separated in different forms so that people can identify which could have affected them. What affected one person must not be the same thing that affected the other person, if you get what I mean. These things are divided into abuse. And other abuse, you have emotional abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. Were you emotionally abused as a child? Were there times you wanted to be heard but you were not heard? Were there times where you felt stifled, you felt unloved, you felt not seen, or any other form of emotional abuse suppressed? These things can transcend into your adulthood. Physical abuse encompasses being hit, being tortured, being given different kinds of physical harm as a child. Physical abuse is a trauma that can go on in people's lives for as long as they live or till the point when they get help. Some people were chained as children and other inhumane treatments. The next one under abuse is sexual abuse. A lot of people get help, therapy, feel loved in the long run, or enter very good adult relationships that will help them heal. But a lot more do not heal. A lot more have had their lives change for the worse. A lot more have had how they think, how their brain function affected by sexual abuse and any of the other abuses listed earlier. I failed to mention that under emotional abuse comes constantly being embarrassed or being harassed as a child. Some people grew up in environments where they get embarrassed in public, where they get harassed when they speak, or any form of emotional torture. So going further, the next thing that falls under adverse childhood experiences is neglect. And under neglect, we have the physical neglect and we have the emotional neglect. The physical neglect is where a child grows up in an environment where their basic needs are ignored or largely unmet. Basic needs like feeding, clothing, education, healthcare, these things fall under physical neglect. Children who grow up in abject poverty, lack, not being able to know where the next meal comes from, not being able to know if they will survive an illness because healthcare is not affordable. These children did not bring themselves to the world, so it is not their duty to take care of those needs. Emotional neglect is where a child might have all they need physically, but nobody is there for them emotionally. They are unheard, they are unseen, they do not have anybody to take their back when the chips are down. For clarification, emotional abuse is when you're embarrassed, harassed, and emotional neglect is when you're not seen or not heard. So we have talked about abuse, we have talked about neglect. The next one is a dysfunctional family or dysfunctional household. What makes up a dysfunctional household or a dysfunctional family for a child? Things like domestic violence, drunkenness of either or both of the parents, any of the adults in the household being incarcerated, like committing a crime or being locked up. The effects could be lifelong if help is not sought, or if the person as an adult does not identify that the way they behave, what is happening to them, is as a result of their childhood. If you have watched to this point and you're yet to subscribe to this channel, I think you're doing yourself a disfavor because I can assure you that we treat things that will make your life better, make your mental health easier, and make your well-being a lot more healthier than it has ever been. The dysfunctional family dynamics also comes use of illicit drugs. If a child grows up in an environment where illicit drugs are openly used, it can be classified as an adverse childhood experience. Divorce and separation also fall under dysfunctional family dynamics. So the more of these experiences someone has, the higher their score on the scale of measuring ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So which of these experiences did you have as a child? And do you think it affected you in any way? I will go ahead now to tell you how the body and the brain starts to function when they have been exposed to these experiences, these traumas at an early age. So your brain functions as the gate of your body or the gate of your neurological system. In terms of stress, in terms of pressure, or if the body senses danger around, like we listed in all those things that constitute adverse childhood experiences, it is normal for the brain to try to shut its door, to try to protect itself and the rest of the body. Now, this is a normal human reaction. It sets off the body in a flight or fight mode. You begin to want to save yourself and to protect yourself. That is not a problem on its own. However, it becomes a problem when it is constant in a child's life, when the brain has to open and shut, open and shut, open and shut. Like when there is assumed peace, the brain tries to open up and relax, but then these occurrences keep repeating itself, making the brain open and close its gates, open and close its gates, leading to what is called toxic stress. Toxic stress is what now affects the brain and changes how the brain develops. It changes how the parts of the brain that is responsible for your emotions, that is responsible for how you process information, that is responsible for how you adapt. It changes how that part of the brain or how those parts of the brain function or how they develop. So you might be in an abusive marriage thinking that, oh, you're trying to save your children, not knowing that you're destroying how their brains are forming or developing. Apart from affecting emotion regulation, learning abilities, or memory, this also affects the immune system in the long run. So not only does it affect your mental health, it also affects the person's physical health. One bad thing about ACEs is that they do not remain in your childhood. No, they never get left behind. It's not something you can outgrow. You just leave it behind, except you have special intervention or something really saves you from it. ACEs either hibernate for a period only to spring up sometime later in life, or they follow you like your shadow all through your life. It affects your learning capacity, it affects memory, it affects how you relate with people. It gives some people trust issues. It makes some people to be hyper vigilant. It makes some people to be withdrawn all through their lives or at a later date. Research and studies have shown that people who had adverse childhood experiences are more likely to have physical health challenges ranging from cardiac issues to high blood pressure, cancers, different kind of cancers, and other known health issues. That is not to say that everybody who has had adverse childhood experience must have these physical health issues. However, it says that they are more likely than people who did not experience them to have these experiences or these health challenges later in life. So far, I am sure you have understood what adverse childhood experiences are, what and what fall under adverse childhood experiences, and the likelihood or the likely outcomes of having adverse childhood experiences. I want us to end this episode on this note. If you have gotten here and you are yet to subscribe, that means you will be missing the concluding part of this video. So subscribe, like, comment so that you'll be reminded when the next one drops. My name is Neka. I am your psychology of mental health advocate, and what we do here is to help your mental health and well-being. Thank you for watching. See you in the concluding video. Bye.